They gave me 90 seconds to collect my belongings from the operating room observation deck. 90 seconds. My brother, Dr. Nathan Mercer, chief of surgery at Ridgemont Memorial Hospital in Charlotte, North Carolina, stood in the doorway with his arms folded like he was delivering a terminal diagnosis. Except the patient was my career. I'd just finished assisting on a 7-hour spinal reconstruction. My scrub still had sweat marks along the collar. The patient, a 19-year-old college swimmer named Aiden, was stable in recovery because I'd caught the arterial bleed that everyone else missed. And now my brother was telling me I was done. Dr. Mercer, you are being placed on immediate administrative suspension pending a review of your surgical conduct. Effective now. Please surrender your hospital badge and access credentials. He used my last name. Not Jenna. Not Sis. Dr. Mercer. Like we hadn't grown up sharing bunk beds in a 2-bedroom apartment in Raleigh. Like our mother hadn't worked double shifts at a textile mill so we could both get through med school. I looked around the observation deck. 6 residents stood frozen behind the glass, watching like they were witnessing a live autopsy. Dr. Carla Vega, my senior surgical fellow, had her hand over her mouth. Tyler Brooks, our anesthesiologist, was gripping the edge of the console so hard his knuckles had gone white. Nobody understood what was happening, including me. What conduct? I asked. My voice came out steadier than I expected. Nathan didn't blink. That will be addressed in the formal review. For now, you are not to enter any surgical suite, access patient records, or contact department staff regarding active cases. I almost laughed. Almost. But the look on Carla's face stopped me. She wasn't confused anymore. She was furious. And not at me. I unclipped my badge and set it on the metal tray next to a pair of surgical loops I'd bought with my first attending paycheck. 3 years of 12-hour days, 600 surgeries, not a single malpractice complaint. All of it reduced to a plastic card on a steel tray. Nathan checked his watch. You have 60 seconds remaining. That's when the door behind him opened. Carla stepped through first, still in her surgical cap. Then Tyler. Then Dr. Priya Nair, our trauma fellow. Then 4 residents, 3 nurses, and the scrub tech who'd been with me since my first solo procedure. 14 people, lined up in the hallway like a wall of blue scrubs. Carla spoke first. If she goes, we're filing formal objections with the medical board. Every one of us. Nathan's jaw tightened. This is an administrative matter. It doesn't concern you. Tyler crossed his arms. You just suspended the best surgeon in this hospital in front of her own team. It concerns all of us. Nathan looked at the line of faces behind Carla. For half a second, something flickered across his expression. Not guilt. Calculation. He was counting how many people he'd have to replace. This will be noted, he said. Then he turned and walked away, his shoes clicking against the tile like a metronome counting down the end of something. I picked up my loops, put them in my coat pocket, and walked toward the elevator. The 14 followed. Nobody spoke. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. A patient transport team stopped in the hallway and stared. A nurse at the central station looked up from her computer, then immediately looked away. When the elevator doors opened, Carla held them for me. You okay? No, I said, but I will be. The parking garage smelled like exhaust and concrete dust. My car was on the 3rd level, right where I'd left it at 4 a.m. when I'd come in for Aiden's surgery. That felt like a different lifetime now. Tyler leaned against the pillar near my car. You know this is about the Patterson case, don't you? I knew. I just didn't want to say it out loud yet. 3 weeks earlier, a 62-year-old woman named Gloria Patterson had come into Ridgemont for a routine gallbladder removal. Nathan performed the surgery himself, which was unusual. Chiefs don't typically handle laparoscopic cholecystectomies, but Gloria was married to Judge Richard Patterson, a man who sat on the hospital's board of directors and who had recently donated $2 million for the new surgical wing that would bear Nathan's name. The surgery went wrong. Not dramatically wrong, not the kind of wrong that sets off alarms and sends people running. The quiet kind. A nicked bile duct that Nathan either didn't notice or chose to ignore. Gloria was discharged 48 hours later with what the chart described as expected postoperative discomfort. I found the complication 4 days after that, when Gloria came back through the ER with a fever of 103 and a belly full of bile. I stabilized her, ordered the imaging Nathan should have ordered during the initial procedure, and discovered the leak. She needed emergency revision surgery. I performed it at 2 in the morning with Tyler and Carla by my side. Gloria survived. Barely. When I reviewed the operative notes from Nathan's original surgery, something didn't add up. The timestamps were clean. Too clean. The complication wasn't mentioned anywhere. Not in the surgical log, not in the anesthesia record, not in the nursing notes. It was like it never happened. I brought it to Nathan privately, sat in his office, door closed, and showed him the imaging. His response was a masterclass in deflection. Post-surgical complications happen, Jenna. The bile duct was inflamed from the start. You know how these things progress. I do know, I said. Which is why I also know that a 4-millimeter laceration doesn't progress. It's caused. He stared at me for a long time. The silence in that office was heavier than anything I'd ever felt in an OR. Be very careful about what you're implying, he said. I'm not implying anything. I'm reading the imaging. He stood up and opened the door. That was the end of the conversation. But it wasn't the end of the problem. Because the next day, I accessed the hospital's backup server, the one that mirrors all surgical records before they can be amended, and found what I was looking for. Nathan's original operative report, the unedited version. It noted the bile duct injury at timestamp 1423, described the attempt to cauterize, and then simply stopped. The next entry, added 6 hours later, made no mention of it. He'd rewritten his own surgical record. I saved the files to an encrypted external drive and locked it in my apartment. I didn't tell anyone. Not yet. I wanted to believe there was an explanation. That my brother, the same kid who used to practice sutures on banana peels at the kitchen table, hadn't falsified a medical record to protect his reputation. Then Gloria Patterson's husband called the hospital. Not to complain. To thank Nathan personally for his wife's excellent care. Nathan accepted the gratitude, shook the judge's hand in the lobby, and posed for a photo that ended up in the Charlotte Observer's health section, smiling, confident, like nothing had gone wrong at all. That was the moment I stopped hoping for an explanation and started building a case. Now I was sitting in my apartment, badge gone, career suspended, staring at the external drive on my kitchen counter like it was a loaded weapon. Which, in a way, it was. My phone buzzed. Mom. I answered without thinking. Hey. Nathan called, she said. Her voice had that careful tone she used when she was trying not to take sides, which always meant she already had. He said there was an issue at the hospital, something about your surgical privileges. He suspended me, Mom. In front of my entire team. Silence. Then, gently, honey, you know your brother has a lot on his plate. The new wing, the board meetings, the fundraising. Maybe he felt he had to make a tough call. He falsified a patient's medical record, I said. And when I found out, he removed me to keep it quiet. Another silence. Longer this time. Jenna, that's a very serious accusation. Are you sure you're not just stressed? You've been working so many hours lately. Nathan mentioned you seemed burned out. Of course he did. That was his playbook. Plant the narrative before the truth has a chance to walk through the door. Same thing he did when we were kids. He'd break something, then tell Mom I'd been acting out all week. By the time I tried to explain, the verdict was already in. I'm not burned out, I said. I'm telling the truth. She sighed. Just promise me you won't do anything rash. You two are all I have. I hung up and sat there for a long time. The apartment was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the faint sound of traffic on Independence Boulevard. I'd moved to Charlotte for this job, left a fellowship at Johns Hopkins because Nathan said we'd build something together. Family legacy. Mercer and Mercer. That was the dream. Now the dream was a falsified operative report and a brother who'd rather destroy my career than admit he'd made a mistake. A knock on my door came at 9 that evening. Carla, still in scrubs, holding a manila folder. You need to see this, she said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. Inside the folder were printed emails. Internal communications between Nathan and the hospital's risk management director, Dr. Leonard Foss. The subject line on the first one read, Preemptive Personnel Action, Dr. J. Mercer. The date was 11 days before my suspension. He planned this, I said. Carla nodded. He submitted a performance concern report claiming you'd shown signs of clinical impairment, cited 3 incidents that never happened. Foss signed off without verification. I flipped through the pages. One of the fabricated incidents described me making an error during a valve replacement. I wasn't even on call that day. I was at a conference in Atlanta. I had the hotel receipt to prove it. How did you get these? I asked. Tyler, she said. His cousin works in IT. The emails were flagged for deletion next week. I looked at her. You know what happens if we go forward with this? She didn't hesitate. I know what happens if we don't. I spent the rest of that night organizing everything. The original operative report from the backup server, the amended version Nathan submitted, the emails to Foss, the fabricated performance complaints, Gloria Patterson's readmission records. I laid it all out on my dining table like a surgical plan. Every document was a layer. Every timestamp was a suture holding the truth together. By morning, I had a name, Rebecca Thornton, medical malpractice attorney, former hospital compliance officer, offices in Uptown Charlotte. Carla had found her through a mutual contact at Duke. Rebecca answered on the second ring. Her voice was sharp, direct, the kind of voice that didn't waste syllables. Dr. Mercer, I've reviewed the preliminary documents your colleague sent. You have a credible case for wrongful suspension, medical record falsification, and retaliatory action. But I need to ask you something first. Go ahead. Are you prepared for what this does to your family? I looked at the wall where I'd hung my medical school diploma. Next to it was a photo of Nathan and me at my white coat ceremony. He had his arm around my shoulder. We were both smiling. I'm prepared for the truth, I said. Whatever shape it takes. Good. Because once we file with the state medical board, there's no quiet resolution. Your brother's license, his position, his reputation, it all goes under the microscope. It should have been under the microscope the moment he rewrote that surgical report. She paused. I like you already. Let's meet tomorrow. Bring everything. The next 2 weeks felt like operating in slow motion. Rebecca filed the complaint with the North Carolina Medical Board on a Tuesday. By Wednesday, the hospital's legal team had been notified. By Thursday, I received a formal cease and desist letter from Ridgemont's general counsel warning me against making defamatory statements about hospital personnel. I showed it to Rebecca. She laughed. They're scared, she said. Scared people send lawyers. Confident people send facts. Meanwhile, the hospital was unraveling from the inside. Word of my suspension had spread through every department. Nurses who'd worked with me for years were asking questions. Residents who'd trained under me were comparing notes. And somewhere in that web of whispers, Gloria Patterson's readmission file started making the rounds. Tyler called me on a Friday afternoon. 2 more attendings filed grievances today. Dr. Chen and Dr. Abadi. They're citing hostile work environment and lack of clinical transparency. Because of my case? Because of everything. Your case just gave people permission to say what they've been thinking for years. Nathan runs that department like it's his personal kingdom. People are tired of it. I wanted to feel vindicated. Instead, I felt heavy. I hadn't set out to burn down a hospital. I just wanted my brother to tell the truth. The medical board investigator arrived the following Monday. Dr. Sandra Okafor, a tall woman with reading glasses on a silver chain and a briefcase that looked like it had seen 100 hearings. She set up in the hospital's conference room and started interviewing staff one by one. Nathan tried to control the narrative. He released a department-wide memo calling the investigation routine and asking staff to cooperate fully while maintaining focus on patient care. Translation: don't say anything that makes me look bad. But people talked anyway. 14 of them. The same 14 who'd stood in that hallway the day I was suspended. Each one sat in that conference room and told Dr. Okafor exactly what they'd seen and what they knew. Carla told me later that when it was Tyler's turn, he brought a USB drive with the original backup server logs. The ones Nathan's IT team had tried to delete. Tyler's cousin had saved them 3 hours before the scheduled purge. Dr. Okafor examined them on the spot. Her expression didn't change, but she asked Tyler to stay for an additional 40 minutes. That same evening, Nathan called me. First time since the suspension. You're making a mistake, he said. His voice was controlled, but I could hear the edge underneath. The same edge he used in the OR when something wasn't going according to plan. I'm not the one who falsified a medical record, Nathan. I didn't falsify anything. I revised the notes for accuracy after further review of the imaging. Further review? You deleted the complication entry and replaced it with nothing. Gloria Patterson almost died. She didn't die. She's fine now. Because I fixed what you broke. Silence. Long and bitter. Then his voice dropped. You know what this does to Mom if I lose my license. Don't use her against me, I said. You've been doing that since we were 12. He hung up. I sat in the dark for a while, listening to the city sounds through the window. A siren somewhere. A dog barking. The ordinary noise of a world that didn't know or care that two siblings were tearing each other apart over the truth. The board's preliminary findings came 10 days later. Rebecca called me at 7 in the morning. They found evidence of record alteration, she said. Nathan's amended report doesn't match the backup server timestamps. The original clearly documents the bile duct injury and an incomplete repair attempt. His revised version omits both. I exhaled slowly. What happens now? Formal hearing. His license is flagged pending review, and the hospital is conducting its own internal investigation because the board notified them that their risk management process failed to detect the alteration. Meaning Fossey is in trouble too. Fossey resigned yesterday, Rebecca said. Quietly. No announcement. Of course. The rats always leave before the ship officially sinks. That week, the local news picked up the story. Not from me. I hadn't spoken to a single reporter. But someone at the hospital leaked enough details for a Charlotte TV station to run a segment. Prominent surgeon under review for alleged record falsification. Patient nearly died following initial procedure. Nathan's photo appeared on screen. The same confident smile from the newspaper feature with Judge Patterson. Except now it looked different. It looked like a mask. My phone rang non-stop after that. Old classmates, former colleagues, strangers who'd seen the coverage. Most were supportive. A few were curious. One text from a number I didn't recognize simply said, "You should have stayed quiet." I showed it to Rebecca. She'd seen it before. Intimidation from people who benefit from silence, she said. Save it. Everything is evidence. The formal hearing was scheduled for a Thursday in Raleigh. The board's conference room smelled like carpet cleaner and old coffee. Nathan arrived in a tailored suit, flanked by two attorneys from one of Charlotte's biggest firms. He looked calm, controlled. Every inch the chief of surgery. I wore a blazer I'd bought on sale at Nordstrom and carried a folder of documents that could end his career. Rebecca sat beside me, pen ready, legal pad open. The board chair, a silver-haired cardiologist named Dr. Wendell Park, opened the proceedings with a statement about the gravity of the allegations and the importance of due process. Then he turned to Nathan. Dr. Mercer, do you understand the nature of the complaint filed against you? Nathan straightened. I do. And I want to state for the record that I have always acted in the best interest of my patients. Rebecca leaned over and whispered, "Watch his hands." I did. They were steady. But his left thumb kept pressing against his index finger, a tic I'd known since childhood. He was nervous. The next 3 hours were methodical. The board reviewed the original operative report, the amended version, the backup server logs, the emails to Foss, the fabricated performance complaints against me. Nathan's attorneys argued that the revision was standard practice, that surgical notes are frequently updated for clarity, that my complaint was motivated by personal rivalry. Then Dr. Okafor presented her findings. She projected the two versions of the operative report side by side on a screen. The original clearly documented the bile duct injury at 14:23. The amended version showed no mention of it. The deletion timestamp matched Nathan's login credentials exactly. The room went quiet. Dr. Park leaned forward. Dr. Mercer, can you explain why the documented complication was removed from the final operative report? Nathan's lead attorney started to speak, but Nathan raised his hand. I believed the initial notation was premature. The injury was minimal and self-resolving. Dr. Okafor responded without looking up from her notes. The patient was readmitted 5 days later with biliary peritonitis requiring emergency surgery. That is not consistent with a self-resolving injury. Nathan didn't respond. His thumb pressed harder against his finger. The board recessed for 45 minutes. When they returned, Dr. Park read the preliminary determination. The board finds sufficient evidence of medical record alteration in violation of North Carolina General Statute 90-14. Dr. Nathan Mercer's medical license is hereby placed under formal suspension pending completion of disciplinary proceedings. Additionally, this matter has been referred to the hospital's credentialing committee for independent review. Nathan stood there, didn't move. His attorneys whispered something, but he wasn't listening. He was looking at me. For a moment, just a moment, I saw the kid who used to sit across from me at the kitchen table, quizzing me on anatomy flashcards. The brother who drove 3 hours to bring me soup when I had mono during my second year of residency. The person I thought would always have my back. Then the moment passed, and he walked out of the room without a word. Outside, the October air was cool and clean. Rebecca stood beside me on the steps. "How do you feel?" "Like I just performed surgery on my own family," I said. "Successful, but the recovery's going to hurt." She nodded. "They'll finalize within 60 days. His hospital privileges are already under review. And your suspension has been formally rescinded. You can go back Monday if you want." If I want. That was the part nobody told you about. Winning doesn't always feel like winning. Sometimes it just feels like the silence after a long code, when the monitors stop beeping and you realize the patient is either going to make it or they're not, and there's nothing left to do but wait. I didn't go back to Ridgemont on Monday. I called Rebecca instead. "I want to do something different," I said. She listened. 3 months later, I signed the lease on a building in the Noda Arts District, a converted warehouse with exposed brick and terrible plumbing. Carla was the first person I called, then Tyler, then Priya, then every nurse, tech, and resident who'd stood in that hallway the day Nathan took my badge. Not all of them came, but 11 did. 11 people who left stable hospital jobs to help me build a free surgical clinic for uninsured patients in Mecklenburg County. We called it Meridian Health Partners. Carla came up with the name. Meridian, she said. The highest point. The moment the sun is directly overhead, and there are no shadows. We opened on a Tuesday. Our first patient was a 44-year-old construction worker named David who'd been living with a hernia for 3 years because he couldn't afford the surgery. When I told him we could fix it for free, he cried. Right there in the intake room, tears running down his face while Carla handed him tissues. That's when I knew I'd made the right choice. The hospital replaced Nathan within a month. Dr. Angela Rivera, a transplant specialist from Emory, took over as chief of surgery. I heard she was good, fair, the kind of leader who listened more than she spoke. The department started healing almost immediately. Nathan's license suspension became permanent 6 months later. The board's final report cited falsification of medical records, failure to disclose a known surgical complication, and conduct detrimental to public trust. He didn't appeal. Mom called me the day the decision was announced. She didn't say much. Just, "I'm sorry I didn't listen sooner." I didn't hold it against her. She'd spent her whole life believing Nathan could do no wrong. Letting go of that belief was its own kind of surgery. And some recoveries take longer than others. Nathan and I didn't speak for almost a year. When he finally called, it was a Wednesday evening. I was reviewing patient charts at the clinic, the fluorescent lights humming overhead, a half-eaten sandwich on my desk. "Jenna," he said. "Just my name. No title. No pretense. I'm here. I saw the article about your clinic, in the Observer." I waited. His voice was quieter than I'd ever heard it. "I've been doing some consulting work, small practices. Nothing like before." He paused. "I'm not calling to ask for anything. I just wanted to say that I should have told the truth about the Patterson case from the beginning. I should have trusted you instead of protecting myself, and I'm sorry. For all of it." The words hung there between us, heavy and real. I thought about all the things I could say. How his pride almost killed a woman. How his ego cost me the career I'd built. How his lies turned our family inside out. But I'd spent the last year learning something the hospital never taught me. Holding on to anger is like gripping a scalpel by the blade. The only person it cuts is you. "I hope you find your way back," I said. "Whatever that looks like." "I'm trying," he said. Then, quietly, "Mom says hi." I almost smiled. "Tell her I'll call this weekend." After he hung up, I sat at my desk for a while, staring at the wall. Next to my medical license was a framed photo from the clinic's opening day. 11 people in blue scrubs, standing in front of a converted warehouse with a hand-painted sign that read Meridian Health Partners. Nobody in the photo looked tired. They looked like people who believed in what they were doing. Below the photo, Tyler had taped a small index card with a line he'd stolen from somewhere. "The truth doesn't need volume. It just needs time." I locked up the clinic that night and stepped into the cool Charlotte air. The streetlights cast long shadows on the sidewalk. Somewhere across town, Nathan was probably sitting in a small office, rebuilding a career from the pieces of the one he'd broken. And somewhere across the state, Gloria Patterson was home with her family, alive, because somebody chose honesty over silence. I started the car and pulled out of the parking lot. The road home was quiet, familiar, the same route I drove every night. But that evening, it felt different. Lighter, like the city itself had exhaled. The radio was off. I didn't need noise. The silence was enough. Not the heavy kind, like the day Nathan took my badge. A different kind. The kind that comes when you finally stop carrying something you were never supposed to hold. At the next red light, I glanced at the passenger seat. My old hospital badge was still there, tucked into the side pocket of my bag. I'd never thrown it away. Not because I missed Ridgemont, because it reminded me of the moment I chose the truth over the easy way out. The light turned green. I drove on. The city stretched ahead, wide and quiet and full of people who needed help. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be.